Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha ma'am to take her seat on the podium. Now I would be requesting Mr. Abrar Ahmed Bhuiya, Mr. Sudipto Roy, Ms. Mahzabin Rashid Lamisa, and Ms. Lubaba Mahzabin Prima to take their seat on the podium. I am now handing over the session to Bidisha ma'am.
Thank you, Ishrat. Good evening. Welcome to the last academic session of 7th SAEC. Now, this is a session about budding economists. So, I think for the first couple of minutes, I will try to give an idea of why this session is so important and what is the significance of this session. The fact remains that this is a part of the initiative which is called South Asian Economic Student Meet, SAESM, which is an academic event and annual event of the undergrad students of South Asia. And for the last 19 years, this type of event have been organized in different parts of South Asian countries. And this year, we have with us these 8 students we have with us, and they all participated. In fact, 10 students participated in 19 SAESM, which was held in January in Colombo. And the fact remains that the history of SAESM, that is quite interesting. And since its beginning, since its inception, SANEM has been very closely linked with this initiative. And Dr. Selim Raihan, he is a member of the governing council. And I was the country coordinator for Bangladesh. This initiative is something special because what it tries to do every year in different parts of South Asia, we try to bring 10 students from each of the countries of South Asia, and they undergrad student of economics, and they compete with each other on different themes. One of the core issue or core theme is about presenting paper on different contemporary issues. And also there are some quiz competitions, some panel discussion, and there is also very interesting competition which is known as the competition for budding economists, and where students participate in a wide range of manners, like writing papers, participating in exam, etc. The most important or most consistently which we had every year, that is the paper presentation. And for the paper presentation, just like I said, that every year we choose different theme. And we have been having this in Bangladesh also. We had SAESM for 3 years, and there were, this year it was in Colombo, last year it was in Nepal, the year before it was in Nepal. And for 2 years it was, because of the COVID, it was not, we were not able to hold it, but there were online participation. So every year, the performance of Bangladesh team was quite well appreciated, and we were able to participate well, and we were able to receive prizes in different themes. And this year, the theme, broadly speaking, it was on green economy. And there were papers invited on different aspects of green economy. And our students, 10 of the students participated. And SANEM from the was actively engaged in the preparation process, in the selection process, and in the overall maintenance of this program. And SANEM is also the secretariat of SAESM. So now, without further delay, I would like to invite the 4 paper presenters. And one thing I would like to say that it will not be it will not be proper justice to tell them to present their paper in 5 minutes, because we know that 5 minutes is very less. So so each students will get 5 minutes, but what I will expect that they will try to just provide what they did, how they did, and what they found. So I would request you to be very brief and to just speak about your main process and what result you got. And after hearing from 4 of them, you can ask some question. So there will be a break because having 8 papers all together, it will be a little bit monotonous. So we thought that probably we will break this into 2 sections. And then again, we will hear from another 4 students. So without further delay, let me invite Mr. Abrar. So his full name is Mr. Abrar Ahmed Bhuiya. Sorry, I know them with their first name, so it's a bit difficult for me. Abrar will be presenting, the title is Efficiency at the Crossroad, Analyzing the Nexus of Energy and Environment in the Transition to Renewable Energy, Evidence from Bangladesh. So he will be talking about renewable energy.
It's not count. We want to save some time by omitting his hello everyone, I'm Abrar Ahmed Bhuiya, a student at the Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. My paper is titled Efficiency at the Crossroads, Analyzing the Nexus of Energy and Environment in the Transition to Renewable. I have done this study in the context of Bangladesh. The research question of my study is I wanted to figure out the dynamics among the energy efficiency, carbon emission, and renewable energy consumption in the long run and in the short run. And to do so, I first estimated the technical efficiency of energy, that is energy efficiency for Bangladesh, and then I empirically examined the long run and the short run causal relationship among the considered variables that are energy efficiency, carbon emission, and renewable energy consumption for Bangladesh. So this study aims to prove that renewable energy consumption results into increased efficiency of the energy sector, of the renewable energy, and as well as the overall energy sector of Bangladesh. So the first thing that comes to our mind that why efficiency, why we are considering efficiency while talking to energy transition. Efficiency gives us a starting point to think about what to do when designing a policy that is for energy transition for the country. So for the study, I have taken a panel of 12 countries over 32 years. And then I have utilized stochastic frontier analysis model to estimate the efficiency score for 12 countries over the period. And then I have taken 30 years data for Bangladesh, and then I utilized the data for further time series analysis. So in stochastic frontier analysis, I have estimated this a linear version of Cobb-Douglas equation. The equation, the independent variables of the equations are capital, labor, and energy, and it also includes an inefficiency term U that we are interested in. So the calculated efficiency scores are in this figure. You can see that till 2015, the Bangladesh faced a declining trend in energy efficiency scores. And after 2016, the situation started to improve, and it remained steady at the end of the period. The reason may be that in 2016, power system master plan was introduced, and the one of the key points of the master plan was the efficient utilization of the national resources, especially coal and gas. So after after estimating the efficiency, I have considered, I have done a time series analysis for finding out the dynamics among the variables. In time series, we first check for the stationarity, then we find out if there is any co-integration, if there is a long-run relationship among the variable, then we choose an appropriate model based on the results. So I have taken these variables and checked for the so after then we have found that one of the equations were co-integrated. That means there is a long-run relationship among the variables. Then I have utilized the vector error correction model for the analysis. So in the vector error correction, I have I estimated these three simultaneous equations, and coefficient for the error correction term was found significant. That means there is a long-run relationship among the variables. So the result of the study says that in the short run, like previous studies, I have found that there is a negative relationship among renewable energy consumption and carbon dioxide emission. And in the short run, technical efficiency contributes to pollution, that is carbon dioxide emission. The reason may be that we are focusing more on carbon efficient technologies.
You have 1 minute.
Carbon efficient technologies and greater efficiency of the non-renewables makes it competitive, and the renewable energy consumption decreases for this competitiveness. And in the long run, while the fossil fuel hampers the technical efficiency of the country, renewable energy contributes to that technical efficiency in the long run. Renewable energy not just ensures technical efficiency, it also contributes to allocative efficiency, and it can increase the economic efficiency in the long run. But how? Then comes the role of the policymakers to do something. So we can if we can make renewables cost effective, then it will be integrated in the energy mix of the country. From the discussion, the recommendation comes is we have to make renewable cost effective. There is two types of cost: monetary. With technological advancement, renewables are becoming affordable as the technologies are introduced into the market. And there is non-monetary cost associated with in this.
Need to wrap
so,
up.
Yes, ma'am. The last slide. For the non-monetary cost, the policies should be designed to reduce systematic risks and to reduce administrative barriers. And subsidies should be shifted from non-renewables to renewables. In conclusion, non-renewables may seem cheap, but we pay more as a society when holistic economic and environmental perspective are considered. And when it comes to transition to renewables, now we should not ask why, it is time to figure out how. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Thank you. Everyone is super excited. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we have Mr. Sudipto Roy. He is a student from the Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. And he will be talking about bridging growth and sustainability, biomass energy in South Asia's circular economy. Okay, clap, yes. Sudipto, 5 minutes.
So my paper is titled Bridging Growth and Sustainability, Biomass Energy in South Asia's Circular Economy. I'm Sudipto Roy from the Department of Economics of University of Dhaka.
Let me just interrupt you. This paper got first prize in that section.
Thank you, ma'am, for recognizing that. Let me go through the background of this paper. Biomass energy is a renewable source of carbon energy that is abundant and does not deplete. So the utilization of renewable energy sources to achieve economic benefits could be a suitable approach for ensuring both environmental and economic sustainability. So why did I choose South Asia for that? In South Asia, resource scarcity and environment degradation are pressing challenges. The circular economy offers a pathway towards both economic prosperity and ecological resilience. The region's vast biomass resources comprising of agricultural residues, organic waste, and dedicated energy crops hold immense potential as a renewable and sustainable energy source that aligns with circular economic principles. So what was my research objective? It was to investigate the complex relationship between economic growth, oil price dynamics, and the adoption of biomass energy consumption in South Asian countries, namely Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan. So from my literature review, I found 3 key points. There's a positive correlation between GDP and biomass energy consumption. The oil price fluctuations influence domestic production and economic growth, and oil price is one of the determinants of biomass energy consumption. The study is different in the case that it considered most of the countries of South Asia, which previous studies did not actually consider, and it incorporated oil price dynamics in the relationship, which was not in the previous studies. So for my data, I used data from 1989 to 2019, which focused on 3 key variables, which are the GDP growth rate, biomass energy consumption, and international crude oil price. For my methodology, I used ARDL co-integration method and granular causality analysis. This covered the methodology of my paper. And from my results, I found out that from the unit road test I performed, the biomass energy consumption series is an integrated process of 1, and the GDP series is an integrated process of 0, which is that is stationary at level, except for Bangladesh, though. And these were the results from my bound testing for co-integration. And the results, to summarize the results from the bound testing, I found out when there's the dependent variable is GDP growth rate, there's a co-integration for all countries. And when it is biomass energy consumption, there is no co-integration. But for the crude oil price, there is no co-integration, but for all countries except for Bhutan. These are the empirical results I found from my short run and long run coefficients for ARDL. From the results, I found out that in the short run, a 1% increase in crude oil price results in a 2.09% increase in biomass energy consumption in India. And in the long run, if there is a 1% increase in GDP growth rate, we see a 318% increase in biomass consumption. And this was for India. This could be because of a larger economy size than others. And for Bangladesh and Pakistan, I found out the biomass consumption actually decreases. Like for Bangladesh, it decreases by 137%, and for Pakistan, it decreases by 77%. For Sri Lanka, I did not find it significant. Probably the countries with smaller economies do not move towards renewable energy with GDP growth rate. These were the results from my granular causality, and there's a significant unidirectional causality in the case of India from biomass consumption to GDP. So there's a significant impact on GDP because of biomass consumption. Also, we found a significance of oil prices on GDP in the case of Sri Lanka. Oil price also impacts biomass consumption in the case of Nepal. So, discussing all my results, in the case of India...
You have 1 minute.
Okay. In the case of India, I previously found out from the results that the 318% increase in biomass consumption was observed for 1% GDP growth. And similar findings were observed for the BRICS nations. And for Bangladesh and Pakistan, I found a decrease, which were similar results in the case of next 11 countries, which Bangladesh and Pakistan are part of. I did not find a significant relationship for Sri Lanka, so the results are context dependent because previous studies shows that biomass consumption and GDP growth rate in Argentina and Jamaica there was no co-integration. And also in the case of India, the biomass consumption increased by 2.09% when there's an increase of 1% in crude oil prices. So this was also seen in previous studies. From my recommendation, I would suggest to incorporate biomass energy consumption in the South Asian region and to incorporate customized energy policies for each of the countries, since every country is different. And I would emphasize on the environmental conservation that includes measures to introduce the environmental impact of biomass energy production. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And your slides are also very consistently green. Thank you. as I said that this paper was the best paper in that session, the session on circular economy. So now we have the third paper. The third paper is that will be presented by Ms. Mahajabin Rashid Lamisha. She is the student of the Economics Department, Dhaka University, and she will be talking about green tourism. Basically, her title is Potentials and Challenges of Implementing Cycle Tourism in South Asia, Study on Cox's Bazar, Understanding the Scopes of Sustainable Transportation.
Hello everyone, this is Mahajabin Rashid Lamisha and I'm a student of Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. And the paper that I will be presenting today is Implementing Cycle Tourism in South Asia, Study on Cox's Bazar to Understand Tourist Perspective and the Scopes of Sustainable Transportation. So this study tries to explore the benefits that South Asian countries can yield by implementing cycle tourism and also to understand the underlying challenges that they may face in implementing this new travel mode. And cycle has been considered as the primary mode of transportation, and the distance that it covers in this study is 25-kilometer distance. And the background, for the background and rationale, mainly we took Europe cycling infrastructure as the motivation of our paper, since Europe has already has implemented a successful safe cycling infrastructure, and at the same time some Southeast Asian countries are also offering cycle tourism to its tourists. So we were thinking, how about Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, and other similar cities of South Asia like Kandy of Sri Lanka and Goa of India could also promote cycling tourism in the same way. And we will, and this paper mainly focused on 4 key aspects. One is the willingness to shift to cycle tourism. The second is if there exists any attitude and behavior gap between the tourist response. And thirdly, the scope of sustainable tourism in this area, that is Cox's Bazar, and then developing a well-planned cycle tourism infrastructure for the tourist. So before we jump into the main discussion, there are some definitions that we have followed in this paper. And for the methodology, this is a mixed method paper. And for the quantitative method, we collected data through Google form that had 12 close-ended and 1 open-ended question. And we had 351 response in total. And we ran a logistic regression analysis to see what are the factors that can control the tourist willingness to get involved in cycle tourism, mainly to shift to cycle tourism for the other mode of transportation that were already available. And we also run a cross-tabulation analysis to measure the attitude-behavior gap, that is the discrepancy between the tourist responsible travel attitude and their willingness to choose a sustainable travel mode when the choice is given to them. And on our quantitative finding, we found that the geographical location or the geographical location, the gender plays no role in people's willingness to shift to cycle tourism, but their opinion on environmental friendliness and their perspective on family-friendly infrastructure and its importance, and also the decision making, that is index variable. These are the significant variables that impacts people's willingness to shift to cycle tourism. At the same time, from our analysis, we found that there is a 30% attitude behavior gap in their tourist responses. That is, they think that these sustainable transportation modes are very important for them to, like, for the other tourists to follow, but when it comes to choosing for themselves and their family, they are very reluctant to choose this mode of transportation. And in our qualitative analysis, we tried to find what are the reasons behind this, and we have found that one of the significant reasons behind people's reluctance to shift to cycling, that is, they don't know how to cycle, since Bangladesh, they don't have a proper cycling infrastructure. Therefore, people are not very familiar to it. And at the same time, even if someone is personally familiar with cycling, their family members may not. And therefore, there is this not knowing cycling, and the lack of family friendliness is one of the concerns for them. Next up, they also want to have a relaxing vacation, since the location that we have selected was Cox's Bazar. So, but people usually want to have a relaxing vacation, and they don't want to get involved in a transportation mode that may want them to engage in a stressful activity. At the same time, the most important one was the people's skepticism about the distance, infrastructure, and safety. So one of the important finding was that the distance we have chosen was 25 kilometers, which was quite a large distance. So we have found that people are more willing to use cycle in the shorter distance, that is inside the Cox's Bazar city and similar situations. And about the infrastructure and safety thing, people think that since Bangladesh don't have a well-structured infrastructure for cycling, so it will not be very safe for them, and they won't get proper traffic, there won't be proper traffic measures, so people are very skeptic about their safety. The dynamic and ecologically conscious cycling tourism model that we have proposed here, it has 4 sides. That is incorporating the consumer demand, understanding the potential benefits, the probable challenges that we may face when implementing this model, and also the requirement for infrastructure development. And so the study has revealed that tourists visiting Cox's Bazar have significant interest in sustainable tourism mode, but we have to make certain modifications and developments. And for this, we have some recommendations, that is designing separate lanes for cycling, at the same time providing security by providing adequate light and strict traffic controls to ensure their safety. And most importantly, we have to familiarize cycle among the tourists and locals, so that the tourists think that cycling is a part of that tourist destination. Otherwise, it won't be marketed properly. And at the same time, since people have shown their interest in using cycle for shorter distance, so making rent-based cycling and an app available for people, mostly inside Cox's Bazar city, will help us to promote it more properly. And our last recommendation is that ensuring facilities like water dispensers, vending machines, service centers, restrooms, etc. at certain intervals will help the cyclists to get more interested in cycling. So that was my presentation, and thank you all.
Thank you. Lamisha, I was confident that you will be able to finish in time. Okay. Now we have the 4th presenter, Ms. Lubaba Mahjabin Prima. She is a student of Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and she will be talking about biodiversity, and her title is Structural Transformation and Biodiversity in South Asia, Rival or Ally.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lubaba Mahjabin Prima, a student of the Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and today I will be investigating is structural transformation a rival or an ally for the biodiversity in South Asia. So upon finding a research gap as to there is no specific study done on the role of structural transformation on the preservation of biodiversity, and especially in the context of South Asia, I decide to investigate the same. I also aim to develop a theory of change mechanism suited for the preservation of biodiversity in this region of the world. I've taken data from World Development Indicators, WDI, on issues like GDP growth rate, population density, urban share of population, trade and manufacturing share in GDP. These latter two essentially capture the process of structural transformation, which is the mechanism where majority sectors of the economy shift from traditional ones to more advanced ones, a phenomenon that is we're observing across the globe. I've also taken data from Environmental Performance Index, EPI, on issues like biodiversity, air, water, forestry, fisheries, agriculture, and climate change. Each of these indexes essentially measure the efficacy of policy implementation and governance on preserving that particular variable of the ecology. So they simultaneously measure the quality of ecological variable as well as the governance in that particular sector. For my dependent variable here, I have Environmental Vitality, Biodiversity and Habitat Index. This particularly measures biome protection, species protection, marine protection, territorial protection, etc. Essentially the condition of biodiversity in a country or territory. For independent variables, I have the structural variables that I've mentioned earlier, as well as the ecological variables. I have formed a panel data of 184 countries and territories over a span of 23 years. I have set 6 control variables, the structural variables that I've mentioned, as well as the dummy for South Asia to capture the particular uniqueness of this region. And then I will be adding the environmental variables as well. I run unit root tests and find no stationarity in the data. I run both fixed effects panel regression model and random effects panel regression model, and then I run Hausman tests to measure the efficacy of both of these models. So this is my fixed effects model. As you can see, this has all the structural variables that I've mentioned: GDP growth rate, population density, urban population share, manufacturing share in GDP, trade share in GDP, a dummy for South Asia, and a variable X. This is essentially the ecological variable. At first, I run the model without any X or without any ecological variable. Then I add each of the variable one at a time. So I add air, then water, etc. So I run this model 7 times. This is the random effects model. As you can see, the variables are the same and we have the X as well. So we run this model 7 times as well. So upon running each of the models 7 times, I run the Hausman tests 7 times as well, and I arrive at the conclusion that the fixed effects panel regression model suits this context best. Then I decide to use the least square dummy variable model, which is very relevant here because it adds a particular dummy for each of the country and territory to capture the unique context of each of the territories, which is very obvious given each country has its own socio-political and geographical background, which would require them to have an additional dummy. So as you can see, this is the model. I have the South Asian dummy as well as the separate country or territory dummy, and I have the X as well, which denotes each of the separate ecological variables. So these are the results that I have arrived on. I have run the model 7 times, and as you can see, these are the results where each time a different ecological variable was added. So the key takeaways from my study are, firstly, the condition of biodiversity in South Asia is not optimistic at all, which shows the urgency of the issue that we have in hand. Secondly, urbanization and population have detrimental effects on biodiversity, which shows the need for better urban planning. Thirdly, and most importantly, structural transformation is not at odds with preservation of biodiversity, rather it's a helpful agent. This may seem perplexing, but it's actually not, because any manufacturing or trade at some level is necessary in any country whatsoever. However, when it's at the rudimentary level, it's actually bad for biodiversity. But as it eventually progresses and advances, it adopts better and more sophisticated methods of production, better energy efficiency, better waste management, etc., so which have less detrimental effects on biology and ecology. Similarly, when a country integrates in international trade, it has to adhere to international standards and regulations, which mean they need to adopt better practices when it comes to trading and manufacturing. Lastly, sectors like forestry, fisheries, and agriculture will not preserve biodiversity on their own. They need to be adept with policy mechanisms. So I propose this theory of change where I suggest that we need to ensure sustainable structural transformation, we need to attain food security in the region, and we need better cities, keeping in mind the massive density pressures that we have in this part of the world. We need to protect our local communities. We need to ensure that any policy mechanism in this part of the world is sensitive to the demands of the civilization existing in these regions. It's crucial to recognize that each of the sectors like agriculture, forestry, fisheries, they need to be in coherence with preservation of biodiversity. Lastly, we need to be sensitive to the demands of mankind, but also to all the other species living alongside us. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Lubaba. So now we can start a little bit of question answer session. So questions from the audience for these 4 young economists? You can raise your hand and, yeah. Yes. It's better that just try to just mention your name and be very specific in your question.
Thank you, ma'am. I am Sadiur Rahman. Currently, I am pursuing my master's in University of Dhaka, Department of Development Studies. My question is, Lamisa, in your paper, you mentioned about the mixed method, quant and qual. So, in your paper, what type of qualitative method you used in your particular paper? You said about open-ended question, survey question. Does your study accommodate the contextual thematic analysis or congruence test, process tracing test? What types of tests you are doing about in the qualitative method? Thank you.
I think we can take the question and then we will get back to you. Okay.
My question is to Abra. Oh.
So it's ESC thing.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the floor. My question is for Mr. Abrar Ahmed Bhuiya. Could you please elaborate on the economic aspect that you're talking about and the exact relationship of the economic, allocative, and technical efficiencies in context of your study? Thank you.
Hello. My question is to Ms. Lubaba. You used panel data for your, analysis, and it was an unbalanced panel. like you prioritize, like taking more cross-sectional units than, like making the data balanced. But we know that, like that poses some certain difficulties, like for panel data estimation. So what was your reasoning behind that? And secondly, we know that cross-sectional dependence appears to be a significant problem for panel data estimation. So did you test for, like cross-sectional dependence in the residuals, or, like other problems such as heteroscedasticity or autocorrelation and such? Thank you.
Take one question. If there is one question for Sudipto, then we can actually have 4 questions. Is there any question for Sudipto? Sami? No.
Someone who does not study economics in Dhaka University. I will give preference to that person. Okay.
Yeah, there is a question for Sudipto. It's okay, but they each have.
So, hello everyone. My question is, of course, to Sudipto Bhai. Bhai, you were talking about a decrement in Pakistan and Bangladesh in the BMS, sir. So, if there are any explanation for that, I was curious to know that. Thank you, Bhai.
Okay, so we have 4 questions to each of you, and you have to be very brief, obviously. So 1 minute to respond. So we can start from Abrar.
The mic is working. Okay, she wanted to know about more about the economics of the relationship between the efficiencies that I have talked about. There is economic efficiency, allocative efficiency, and technical efficiency. And the technical efficiency cannot holistically cannot give us a holistic view when designing a policy. So what I have, my study was on the technical efficiency, and you can calculate the technical efficiency of renewable energies, and it is proved by the literature. But there is no, but we cannot actually quantify the allocative efficiency in my knowledge. So renewable energy ensures allocative efficiency as it ensures all the societal preferred outcomes, like health and well-being of the society, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. And from the literature, I have found that the economic efficiency is the product of allocative efficiency and technical efficiency. So when renewable energy increases the technical efficiency in the long run, and it ensures the allocative efficiency, so as a result, it ensures the economic efficiency finally, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudipto.
Thank you for your question. So there's actually a reasoning behind the decrease for Pakistan and Bangladesh. Even I found in some previous studies for like Bangladesh and Pakistan are part of the next 11 countries, and there's actually a negative relationship between them. So the reasoning behind is like, if you consider the whole of South Asia, like India has actually the capacity to focus on the renewable energy after settling other important economic objectives. And Bangladesh and Pakistan, I don't think they actually have, they are in that state right now to focus on renewables. Also, there's also another for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is actually shifting to clean energy. So there is a clear distinction between clean energy and renewable energy. So these were the reasonings behind for the decrease for Bangladesh and Pakistan. Thank you.
Lamisha.
Thank you for your question. So the qualitative method was mentioned in my paper. For the time constraint, I couldn't show it. So I followed first one open-ended survey where I have took survey response from cyclists who have already experienced cycle tourism in the mentioned route that my paper research on. And secondly, we had IDI. So I conducted 2 IDI, one with a cyclist who's now based in Europe, and another with a tourist who has experienced cycle tourism in different parts of the world, first in Indonesia and in China. And for the KII, I interviewed one female cyclist to get a gendered perspective of Bangladesh cycling situation and infrastructure, and another one was another cyclist who is currently in abroad, but he used to cycle in Bangladesh. So he also compared between his experience in abroad and in Bangladesh. So that was the qualitative approach that I followed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So the question was about the data being unbalanced. So essentially, I tried to incorporate global representativeness, so which is the reason why I took the data. And essentially, some data were missing. It wasn't that I was focusing more on cross-sectional data or trying to incorporate more entities, but rather the goal was, since the data were macro, and since a lot of it came from official reporting, so some of the years, the data for some of the years were missing. So that was the case when it comes to actually taking the unbalanced data. And secondly, the tests were done in accordance to international standards and standard practices, and that's the specific reason why I incorporated the LSDV model to capture the uniqueness of each country or territory for that matter. So if you say, when it comes to that, the data being absent for a specific year, for a specific country, that's, I think, quite aptly captured in the LSDV model. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the answers and definitely for the questions. So I think without further delay, let me congratulate you all, and we can go to the next session, next round of this session. So we have with us other 4 students. So we have Mr. Sadiq Mahabubul Islam, we have Mr. Sami Mohammad, we have Mr. I think there should be an equity and equality in terms of clapping, right? And Sadman Sakib and Chaudhuri Nabila. Okay, so first we will go to Mr. Sadiq Mahabubul Islam, who is a student, Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and he will be talking about factors affecting the renewable energy production and empirical analysis based on global data from 2000 to 2021. So you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sadiq Mahabubul Islam, and this is my paper, Factors Affecting the Renewable Energy Production and Empirical Analysis Based on Global Data from 2000 to 2021. So this is a very brief presentation of my paper here because of the time constraint. So the objective of my study was to understand the intricate connections between the factors influencing a country's renewable energy production. So I have found that the existing literature lacks a comprehensive study of all the variables here. So I wanted to tie up all the factors together. The research question was, what are the factors that impact global renewable energy production? So let us go to the methodology part of the research. So I have collected data from 47 countries worldwide, and I have chosen the countries based on their population and how big is their economy. And the data is from 2000 to 2021. So the panel was a balanced panel, and I have used GLS estimation method. So I employed both fixed effect and random effect models to ensure robust conclusions. So there was some multicollinearity in 2 variables there, but for the greater purpose of the study, I chose to keep both of the variables here. And the variables here is, first, import of electricity, the electricity consumption, the carbon intensity of energy production, nuclear energy production, and development of renewable energy technology per capita, which is basically the number of patents on renewable energy is issued from the countries each year. So then I ran the GLS estimation model and employed both fixed effect and random effect models. And then I went through the Hausman method to test which one should I pursue. So according to that, I chose the fixed effect model. So this is the result that I have found. I have found that the carbon intensity tend to have a negative effect on the production of renewable energy. This is mostly because when a country's energy production is mostly based on carbon-related sources, exists a very palpable infrastructural scenario where the countries tend to rely on the existing infrastructure of their energy production. Therefore, there some policy inertia is at play here, and they are less motivated to transition into renewable energy sources. I have also seen that energy import shows a significantly negative effect on renewable energy production. So during my literature review, I have found that the energy import sometimes have a positive effect on renewable energy because the countries who import high amount of energy from outside tend to have a tendency to lessen the dependence of foreign import. So, sorry. But my study found that the countries tend to have a negative effect on the renewable energy, mostly because that, again, the countries have an existing infrastructure for energy import and everything, so they tend to have a policy inertia here as well. And finally, I found that nuclear energy production has a significant positive effect on the renewable energy production, which is also contrary to some previous studies. So I have found that in some literature it is argued that renewable energy is affected by nuclear energy production because nuclear energy is a very capital intensive process, so it tends to draw the investment from the government towards the nuclear energy to the renewable energy production. But my study has found that nuclear energy tends to have a positive effect on renewable energy as well. And the reasoning is that the countries who has large nuclear energy production infrastructure is the ones with the higher capability to produce and invest more into renewable energy, as well as they are the high income countries of the world. So therefore, both nuclear energy production and renewable energy production is higher in those countries as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sadiq. Okay, now we have Sami Mohammed, student, Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and if he would not have received the Shenhawk Award, I think the clapping would be the same even. Okay, before he start, this paper in fact was selected and got prize as the Shenhawk Award, which is named after Omar Hussain and Mahbubul Haq. And basically in SAESM, every year one paper is considered, and there has been a selection process for each of the sessions. And so there are 10 papers from each of the sessions, and then among this 10 paper, judges select and try to find out which paper is the best among the best. So this paper was, this year was selected as best among the best.
Hello, am I audible? Yes, I see. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hello everyone, welcome to my paper, Flood Vulnerability Driven Internal Migration in Bangladesh, a difference in difference approach. My name is Sami Mohammed from the Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. Now, firstly what we need to understand is that Bangladesh has a unique vulnerability towards floods, especially in coastal regions and in the riverine deltas that are low-lying areas, specifically because it lies at the convergence of 3 major river deltas, which is Brahmaputra, Ganges, and Meghna, right? So because of this topographical feature, Bangladesh is particularly vulnerable towards floods. And when low-income households, and particularly rural households, undergo to exposure to these floods, they use migration as a coping mechanism to migrate to city centers or urban areas in order to cope better with the socioeconomic shock that occurs due to this environmental hazard, right? So this decision to migrate is largely dependent on the environmental dependency of that migrant in those rural areas, and also dependent on the economic condition of those specific migrants and the destination, the types of opportunity that the destination of the migrants are offering, right? So the people who are seeking to migrate often fail to do so because they don't have the capacity to do so, right? So the success of migration as a coping strategy needs to be evaluated in terms of sustainability, in terms of outcomes, and in terms of their well-being. And that's exactly what I try to do, is how vulnerabilities are seen before migration due to environmental shocks, and after migration due to environmental shocks. And I anticipate that these structural factors may recreate vulnerabilities in the destination. Now, what is our hypothesis as we go into this research? Our hypothesis is that flood hazard has some effect on internal migration, that people are displaced internally within Bangladesh due to flood exposure, and that migration has some marginal effects of improving those scenarios, right? Now let's see how those hypotheses hold up according to the data. Now, what is our research question? Our research question is that how flood vulnerability affects migration in Bangladesh and what effect it has on well-being, right? So what do we do in order to assess this? We do an extensive literature review where it tells us that inequality and insecurity is a strong driver of migration in Bangladesh. It also tells us that migration declines somewhat during flooding. This is understandable because the infrastructural abilities and mobility in itself is affected after flood, and recovering from flood, it is understandable that households do not have enough resources to migrate right away, right? So, and the third thing is that we need a multi-dimensional approach while understanding vulnerability, because a linear approach does not cover it. Now, how do we assess vulnerability in our entire study? It has three aspects of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. Exposure is the exposure to the particular flood event that we're talking about. Sensitivity are things that makes the vulnerability worse, and adaptive capacity are things like wealth, which makes it better. Now, we use a novel approach of double difference, of impact evaluation, of difference in difference across multiple time periods, where we have staggered adoption of the treatment. Means multiple people can experience flooding in multiple time periods, and we can have an average effect and see whether they migrated or not, and afterwards, whether they have, what effect did it have. Now, lastly, the conceptual framework that we have is environmental push factors pushing migrants out of their homes, and economic pull factors that attract people towards that particular destination. Now, we have categorized our variables in these particular categories in order for simplicity. And the methodology that we follow primarily is a panel probit model, where we employ a trivial analysis, because there is a lot of endogeneity and a lot of simultaneity in this model. Therefore, we see this just for like a trivial analysis. And then what our actual model does is sees migration as a flood as a treatment variable, and sees the effect on migration. And secondly, it sees migration as a treatment variable and sees the effect on income. After those migrants migrate, what happens to their income? We use BIHS data with a very large sample size, and these are the panel probit results. Lastly, what do we find? We find that after flooding, there is a 0.5% effect on migration, and there is a negative 10% effect on income after migration, right? So this shows us that there is a significant effect. And lastly, what we tell you is that vulnerabilities are extended and exacerbated after people experience migration. We need better opportunities and safe flow of migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we will be hearing about green financing from Mr. Sadban Shakib Rahman.
Hello everyone. So the title of my research paper is Assessing the Impact of Green Financing on Bank Profitability in Bangladesh. So the reason I thought this type of research was necessary is because banks play a very important role in our economy. So if we can find evidence that disbursing green finance improves bank profitability, it would encourage the disbursement of these types of basically projects through loans and stuff. So it basically enables promotion of green finance essentially. So that was the rationale for that. So this is just like some numbers here. This is the level of green finance disbursed by all banks for over the past 10 years. So this is the period of time over which I've carried out my research. So as you can see, it has fluctuated wildly. So there was clearly, a lot of regulatory changes and factors which led to this fluctuation. So I was trying to figure out what could have caused this type of relationship. So my research objective essentially was to investigate the impact of green finance disbursement on the financial performance of 19 conventional commercial banks listed in the Dhaka Stock Exchange. So essentially, I'm trying to see if there's a relationship between green finance and return on equity or return on assets, essentially. So these were the research questions. To complement my quantitative study, I also carried out a qualitative study in the form of key informant interview of bankers in both the central bank as well as private commercial banks that I've sampled. And essentially, they worked in the sustainable finance department themselves, so I thought they could provide some meaningful insights which the data would not necessarily provide. So again, to restate my research question, so the relationship between green finance and bank profitability is one of the things I looked at. What are the main obstacles to green finance disbursement? And what sort of policy recommendations can we come up with through our research? So I won't go through the steps here, but essentially, in my quantitative research section, it was I carried out basically panel regression. So I randomly collected data from 190 annual reports for various variables like profitability measures, bank leverage, various independent variables. And after that, I carried out model selection to see which model would properly forecast this relationship. So to summarize, essentially, first difference model was the most efficient model compared to panel fixed effect model or random effect model. So after that, I carried out regression analysis. And for the qualitative section of my paper, essentially, I designed a questionnaire and I carried out over the telephone interviews. And I basically highlighted the main themes that came up from it. So essentially, my results basically showed that there was indeed a statistically significant relationship between green finance disbursement and bank profitability. So as you can see from my table right there. So essentially, this is the 9.7 in 10 to the power of -5. That's basically the percentage change in green finance disbursement. This is the impact on bank profitability if you use return on asset as the dependent variable. And this is the impact, which is much more pronounced if you use return on equity as a dependent variable. So it's something to consider essentially. So yes, green finance disbursement does, in fact, it can influence bank profitability essentially. So again, I'm not inferring causality here. That's a very precarious thing to do here in economics. But essentially, when I carried out my key informant interviews, I basically found evidence based on the responses that yes, there is indeed a positive impact in terms so basically the bankers essentially said that the government provides a lot of incentives to basically enable the private banks to borrow from the central bank money at a subsidized rate, and then they basically repackage that as green finance, and then they give it out to clients, mostly small, medium enterprise and RMG workers, RMG factories. So again, these were the main themes that were highlighted. We also looked at the challenges, and also one of the main issues that was highlighted was green finance disclosure that is available in our annual reports. There is a lack of uniformity and a lack of transparency in these areas, which kind of made the analysis very difficult. And in one of the takeaways I had from my key informant interviews was that the banker basically said that the sustainable finance departments in many of the private commercial banks, they're basically nominal. They exist only on paper. They don't actually exist in real life. They do this because the regulators basically require them to do it. So to summarize the main findings and contributions of my paper, essentially we find empirical evidence of the positive impact of green finance disbursement on bank profitability. My study was significant because we not only used a larger sample size and a wider time frame, but we also control for various relevant variables like leverage, bank size, bank age. And finally, essentially, my study recommends that we should simplify the green loan certification process, increase the awareness of green finance products. That was the main issue with adoption issues. Enhance the capacity and reporting standards of banks, and provide more incentives and recognition for green finance incentives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have the last presenter, Ms. Chaudhuri Nabila Tasneem, and her topic is about the employment implication of green economic growth. So she will be talking about employment and green growth.
Presenting my paper on the topic of employment implications of green economic growth, a comparative analysis of Harrod-neutral and Hicks-neutral technology. So my study will be mainly focusing on examining how green growth initiatives influenced by different technological paradigms affect employment patterns. The reason why I'm focusing on this topic is because, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, unemployment rates have been a very pressing issue for us globally. And adding to that, the fact that we live in a world where climate conservation, environmental conservation is an important aspect. Together, so we are looking towards this topic. So when we look towards adopting green policies, there arises this dilemma. When companies adopt green policies, it raises up their production costs. So it presents companies with a choice. Either they can scale up production or they can cut down costs. So when they have profit strategies, they may move towards capital or labor intensity, depending on whether green technology has influence on labor or not. So there is this dichotomy that arises. Green technology could negatively impact employment if it ends up displacing labor due to automation or any other case. So when we look into this problem, theoretical models can provide us a framework, but we need empirical analysis to crucially understand the real-world implications of these complex interactions. My research question is, we will be mainly developing a green solo model to explore how Harrod-neutral and Hicks-neutral technical progress impacts employment under green growth initiatives. The research question that is guiding this study is, how do employment rates respond to Harrod-neutral and Hicks-neutral technical progress? These are the three aims of my research. Firstly, I will be analyzing technology's impact on green job dynamics. Secondly, linking green growth with unemployment rate shifts. And finally, advising policy on sustainable jobs and environment. So this is the literature review that I've done, going through it quickly. So we see like to dual aspects.
I think you better skip the literature.
So this is the literature review that I've done. And this is the methodology. So we have taken a 169-country panel over 30 years from 1990 to 2019, analyzing for green job impacts of technologies. This includes 7 South Asian nations, excluding Afghanistan due to data unavailability. The dependent variable that we have is employment rate as a percentage of total labor force, which is a model ILO estimate. And these are the key extraneous variables that we have. Inclusive Green Growth Index, which is an index we have built from Asian Development Bank's paper, which covers 3 aspects: economic growth, social equity, and environmental sustainability. Data sources are World Development Indicator, WITS, and UNDP. Additionally, we have taken capital stock, labor stock, and the solo residual as the other explanatory variables. In addition, we have 2 control variables, inflation rate and FDI. So this is the performance of the South Asian countries in the Inclusive Green Growth Index and its pillars. And we can see an upward trend of all these 7 countries over these 30 years, that they have been significantly getting better in the Inclusive Green Growth Index, which is our measure of the green growth. So in this paper, we are taking a fixed effect panel model, which is supported by the Hausman test. And this fixed effect model captures time-invariant country statistics, refining the impact assessment of variables on employment rates. So this is the fixed effect model that we're using. This includes employment as the Y variable, and these are the explanatory variables that we will be having, and the control variables. So this is the key findings of our paper of the fixed regression model, which we are discussing here. Firstly, we see that the inclusive green growth index positive coefficient shows that the green growth initiatives do in fact boost employment, and there is this positive effect with green jobs. And the total factor productivity negative coefficient suggests productivity increases might reduce employment, possibly due to automation. And then we see a negative correlation between employment and capital stock, which implies capital intensive methods might in fact reduce labor demand, implying that Hicks neutral take might reduce employment. So finally, we look at the conclusions from our studies. We see that green growth initiatives correlate with job creation and endorsing eco-friendly practices. And we need sustainable practices in energy, agriculture, and manufacturing, which are key for job opportunities and environmental solutions. And finally, we see that Hicks neutral technical progress may cause job displacement, while Harrod neutral progress may foster job creation. So these are the policy recommendations that we have. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nabila. We don't have much time, but still we will take questions from the audience. So questions for these 4 young researchers? Yes. Yes?
Thank you, ma'am, for giving me another floor. My question is to a presenter. First of all, Mr. Sadiq Mahabub Islam. In your study, you just show us about a panel model. As we know, the alpha, the constant term, is related to error term in the panel data model. So how that is the unobserved factors you can address in this particular, in your study? And secondly, in your research question, what are the factors that impact global energy production? And you say carbon intensity, importation of energy, and nuclear energy. These factors are already exist in this current literature. So what's the new additions in your doing your study purpose? Second, my question is Sadman Saqib. In your study at the last moment, you just said about you have to do qualitative study about bankers and industry experts about KII. So in your study, have you found any independent or dependent variable variation in that particular study? If so, then please just let me know. And thirdly, I am just one more comment, and I am congratulate Mr. Sami because his excellent presentation.
I think each student can ask 2 questions. I think 2 questions is okay. So you have asked already 2 questions, right?
Yes.
So it's better to give others some.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm Shamsul Abedin Onik from Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. My question is to MD Sadiq Mahabub Islam that renewable energy production depends on investment and input prices. In your paper, you didn't mention about this. How do you control in this process? Thank you.
No more question for Sadiq. Is there any question for Sami and Nabila?
There's a conspiracy.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor again. So Sami, my question is, you mentioned treatment. Was the treatment adopted uniformly for everyone in time? Thank you.
Any question for Nabila? No? Okay, you have one question for Nabila? Yes.
Okay, my question is, wouldn't the employment depend on real wages and productivity in those economies you mentioned in your presentation? Thank you.
Okay, 1 minute to each of you.
So thank you for the questions. Firstly, my apologies that my presentation was very, very brief. So I think there might
Just
be
go to the
other issues here. Thank you. So
Sorry.
about the, let me answer the second question first. So basically, when I was taking the literature and the variables, I did not find, particularly when it comes to the development of renewable energy production technologies, which is basically the patents, it wasn't present in any other variables together. So basically, that's why I put it in here, and I think that also answers that question over there, which is basically import price and investment. So I think that investment on renewable energy production technologies is reflected by the output, which is the result, the patents that are being issued to each country each year. So that's one thing. And about the import price, I think I will incorporate it in my future researches. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for the excellent question. It's very relevant because that's my unique contribution to the literature. Because previously people used not many people used in impact evaluation in order to address these kinds of questions. So what I used was a very new model which was standardized in 2021, Callaway and Santana, which uses difference in difference with staggered treatment adoption. What it means is that people can be exposed to the treatment in different time periods, but we can see the effect because we are trying to see the parallel trends assumption violation, that whether the people who have been treated and the people in the control group have a parallel trend or not on average, even though their treatment adoption was in different times. Therefore, this is a new model applying and contributing to the literature by applying it in multiple time periods. Thank you very much.
So I would like a bit of clarification from the individual who asked me the question, because I don't exactly understand what you mean by the independent-dependent variable variation. So let me just briefly go over what I did for my key informant interview. So there were 6 bankers that I basically interviewed over the telephone, and basically I asked them 3 questions essentially. Do you think there is a relationship between green finance disbursement and bank profitability? What sort of challenges exist in terms of disbursing this green finance? And finally, what more can be done to improve green finance disbursement? So, and that's where all the findings came. I actually summarized the main themes that came out of their response. I actually analyzed the the responses they gave, and I highlighted the main themes. I wasn't able to go over them because of how brief my presentation was, so maybe I missed something there. But I mean, if you could clarify what you were saying, or I don't know if this. No, yeah, so I don't know if this answered your question, sir. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. So my paper does in fact take into account real wage and real GDP, since I have used the ILO model estimates, which takes into account the real wages, as well as in my index I've used the real GDP figures. So there's that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all 4 of you, and basically thank you all 8 of you. And let me tell you that if I want to wrap up, so we know that climate change, environmental sustainability, and green transition, these things are extremely important when we are talking about South Asian countries. And we have heard from 8 of the students about different very important and pertinent research questions on circular economy, on vulnerability, on employment, green financing, renewable energy. So all of these are very pertinent when we are talking about South Asian countries. And as you have already seen, that they have applied methods like cross-section economics and advanced methods of cross-section economics, time series, panel. So I think although when they have heard about the call for paper, the topics appeared quite challenging. And we know that there is a data scarcity when we are talking about environment or issues related to climate change. But it's really wonderful to see the way they have dealt with these questions. And I must say that as their teachers, I must say that although we haven't been able to got a lot of prizes, like it's not that 8 of the students have got the prizes, but all 8 papers, in fact all 10 papers were very excellent papers, and we are very proud of you all. Very, very congratulations. And just the last word, that this session is very important for SANEM because SANEM want to promote and encourage young researchers to do quantitative research, to do qualitative research, and to help them to engage in active academic debate so that they can answer some important research questions that are very pertinent for the countries like Bangladesh. And I hope that this session, through this session, we have been able to encourage some of the young minds who are sitting here and hope to see your research in next year. Thank you.